Well, football season is here. This week we will see Nebraska take on Minnesota. And if you haven't watched my last video on the season of Nebraska, on how Matt Rule's first season will go and how each game would go, along with who will win the Big Ten West and the Big Ten East, and then overall win the Big Ten. I put that out early August, and I took a lot of flack because I was the only one out there on all these predictions that picked Nebraska to beat Minnesota in this first game. It seemed like no one wanted to look at the facts that I was looking at and seeing, and I think everybody was just gun shy, if you know what I mean, because they didn't want to take that chance on Nebraska letting them down. Nebraska's let us down the last 4 or 5 years. I just think people are at that point they want to see it to believe it. So I think I made a good prediction, and I gave my reasoning behind it, and I'll kind of go over it again. So now I'm going to give a game preview, a game prediction, kind of give you a score at the end. Do I still think Nebraska is going to beat Minnesota, or do I think Minnesota wins this? So first I wanted to talk about the depth chart. It just came out, and what I kind of noticed in that right quick is the running back position was one that I saw Anthony Grant third, and I already knew that Gabe Ervin was going to be the number one back, and I just assumed Anthony Grant would be number two, and then Ramir Johnson third, and they have Ramir Johnson second and Anthony Grant third, and I know why. It's because of the turnovers. He looks like he was putting the ball on the ground a little too much, mainly at the end of the fall camp during the scrimmages and things like that. And one thing that will not go, the biggest sin in football is turning over the ball. Even Tom Osborne was that way. If y'all remember, I could remember, a lot of you won't be able to. You go back to that 1994 season when Tommy Frazier went down with a blood clot, and Brooke Behringer had to take over most of the season and did an extremely good job. And Brooke was one of those quarterbacks could easily went to another Power 5 school and been a starter. And he stayed. I got a feeling if the transfer portal was as simple as it is now, he might have left. He even contemplating leaving, and his roommate there, one of the Husker teammates, talked him out of it. But he stayed around and basically backed up Tommy Frazier almost all his career. If you guys remember, at the end of that season when Tommy Frazier finally got the medical okay to play after the last game, going into the national championship game, the bowl game, there was a debate on who would start. And Tom Osborne decided, hey, between now and the bowl game, we're going to evaluate both of these quarterbacks, and whoever does the best at practice will get the start. And it was really close. And even Coach Osborne even said how close it was. And ultimately, he went with Tommy Frazier only because Brooke Behringer turned the ball over just a little bit more than Tommy did during practice. And so even Tom Osborne was that way. You just can't turn the ball over. So even though Anthony Grant is third on the depth chart, I expect to see a lot of Anthony Grant, even against Minnesota. He's done well against Minnesota. He did well last year. And as the season goes on, if he could eliminate them turnovers, I expect him then to kind of move up, and if either be second on the depth chart or be that number one, co-number one with Gabe Ervin, that what you've been seeing in the depth chart that Coach Rules put around the starter as the year goes on, as he clears up. Because Anthony Grant, to me, we've seen him, and he really wasn't a player that turned the ball over a lot. And all players kind of go through a little stretch there, and he was probably just going through a little stretch there during practice. So I expect that to be cleaned up. I don't expect it to be a big deal, and you'll see Anthony Grant right back where he was, because to me, him and Gabe Ervin, they make a real good 1-2 punch. and Ramir Johnson on that third down as that third down back, and that's kind of how I see it going in there. Another thing I kind of noticed is if you looked at the depth chart and see the good thing about Matt Rule this year is it's not like he took over Temple, not like he took over Baylor, where he had to start over and he had to play a lot of young guys his first year, which is what gave him his 1-11 record, his 2-10 record. He had a lot of great players on this team. Keep in mind, Nebraska lost 4 games last year where they had a lead and a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. So you take away them 4 games and give them 4 games as a win, they're 8-4. And so my prediction that I predicted in my last video, where I actually said Nebraska will go 9-3, and I had about 3 or 4 games that could go either way. There's injuries or turnovers or things like that that were going to be real close and could go either way. And out of them 4 games, that would put Nebraska, instead of 9-3, 5-7. So I said I expect them 9-3, 8-4, 9-3. I said 9-3. I could see it 8-4, but I could easily see it go from 5-7 to 9-3, which even 5-7 would put them 5th in their division, which is why I thought everybody was taking the easy way out, and I've noticed that through all the predictions, and even through their Big Ten predictions, it's easy to go, well, they're going to be 5th because that's the easy one. If they went 5-7, 6-6, or even 7-4, they would have been 5th. If they end up going that 8-4, they drop from 3rd to 4th or something like that, if I remember right when I did that. So I just think there's others out there that's done prediction and said, oh, Minnesota's going to win this game. I don't see it, just because they want to see it before they believe it. Because you got to remember, even and I know the concern is the offensive line, and that's a well-deserved concern. But you got to remember, there's 3 players starting on this offensive line that didn't start last year, didn't play last year. Noelle was out last year. He's now in there. Ben Scott transferred in, so he's in there. So when you got 2 or 3 new players on that, it's not the same offensive line. Plus, they are a year older. They got a lot of starts, so I do expect to see improvement. I got to admit, you can't go down much more, but I do expect to see a lot of improvement. I do expect Rule and his coaching style is going to get a little more out of them. So I think that's going to improve. Plus, you got to think our quarterback's different. We got Jeff Sims. Yes, Jeff Sims, I've heard everybody talk about it. He's had a history of turning the ball over. But got to remember, that was early in his career. That was more as a freshman than anything. So, and the way Rules talked, he's cleaned a lot of that up. So hopefully that's true, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. So I actually think this offense, which is a good veteran group, is going to do better than you think. And they're wanting to be physical, they're wanting to pound, and Rules come out and stated he really believes this team's going to be truly, really physical going into the fourth quarter. And remember, that's what's cost Nebraska. When you lose in the fourth quarter, when you got them leads and you lose in the fourth quarter, that's the other team being more physical than you. So I got a feeling you're going to see a lot of that cleaned up. Got to remember the 3-9 season. They're known now as the best 3-9 team ever in the history of college football. Lost all 9 games by 1 score or less. So that's another one. Could have easily went 8-4 or 9-3, maybe even 10-2. So Nebraska's been really close in these seasons that could easily, instead of been 3-9 or 4-8, be 8-4. So my prediction of 9-3 is not really that far off, even though I'm getting a lot of flack. People just talk about how much of a bandwagon I am, and some of that might be a little true. I am a little biased, but I'm also taking what I really believe, and I explain why. And let's get into the game. So let's get into, if I still believe, and it kind of sounds like I do, if I still believe Nebraska pulls out this victory and beats Minnesota come Thursday on 8/31. So let's get into this now. So if everybody's looked at and watched a lot of these predictions about how Nebraska is going to do against Minnesota, and I'm sure you have, and I've seen them, they're all predicting Minnesota, Minnesota, Minnesota. And if you remember right, I said odds makers got Nebraska 7.5 point underdogs, Minnesota favored by 7-0. And I said, if you're a betting person, take Nebraska plus 7 home. I did. I actually went up there and went to it got on the sports back, and I'll show that right. I'll show it on the screen here. And I took, not only did I took Nebraska plus 7.5 points, put $100 on that, I actually did another bet and took Nebraska straight to win the game as well. I also took the under of 44.5, and I didn't get to it in time. At one time it was 46. By the time I got to it and was locking in my bed, it was 44.5. But my prediction is still under 45 points, 44 points. So I think the defenses are going to shine in this game, and that's on both sides of the ball. So let me get into this. I've been watching also Minnesota's fall camp and practices, and PJ Flax, he's got some talent. He's got a brand new quarterback, and you got to remember, people who haven't seen this quarterback before, has a history of turning the ball over as well, and that's something he's got to clean up. And even PJ Flax made that comment. They're starting a brand new running back. We don't have that. They don't have that running back last year that just ate us up. Don't get me wrong, this running back is good. He's going to be a great player, but you got to take all this in consideration. Consider this is the very first game of the season, and they're trying to learn this system under PJ Fleck, and they have I think 3 or 4 brand new offensive linemen, if I remember right, also on this team. So this is a tough to get Matt Rule and this Husker team. Nebraska is going to be one of those teams that no team really going to want to play. They're predicted not to do well. They're predicted to do 5th in the West, which is the weaker of the divisions. And no team is going to want to face them. This is not going to be the same Nebraska teams you've been seeing the last 2 or 3 years. So no one's going to want to, and that's including Michigan. I don't predict Nebraska to beat Michigan. If you watch that video, I didn't predict them. I didn't even predict it to be close. But it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Rule did something to pull that one out. Nebraska had Michigan on the ropes a couple years ago, and what happened was they stripped the ball from Martinez with just a couple minutes left in a tie ball game, and kind of the same old song was playing where we bit ourselves in the foot at the end of the game. So it wouldn't surprise me if Nebraska kept it close. It probably would surprise me a little bit if they did pull out the victory, but it is at home. And I'm going to the game. I'm going to that game. That's one of my games I am going to. So sorry to all my members. I'm not giving that game away because that's one game I want to go to. And I'm also going to go to the Iowa game at the end of the season. All the other games I'm going to give away to all my Big Red Club members. If you want to be part of that drawing, I've already gave away the 2 games for Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, the September games. I gave that away in August, just a week or 2 ago. And congratulations to Mr. Make Money. He won the Northern Illinois game, and Husker Power there won the Louisiana Tech game. And I've already mailed them out. I sent it UPS certified to make sure they get it. So, and I paid for all this just because I don't trust the post office anymore. I wouldn't send anything to the post office. So congratulations to them. I will be giving away the October games on September 17th. So every month I'll be giving away the next month's games. That way I got time to send them to you. You got time to make plans and all that. So September 17th I will be giving away the October games. And then in October, I'll be giving away the November game. So if you want to be part of that and would like to win that, make sure you join the Big Red Club and become a Big Club member. Just click that join button that you see right next to the channel name. And remember, it's the Throw the Bones membership that gets the drawing. The other one is just if you want to support the channel and just want to be a true Husker supporter. But if you want to win the memorabilia or even the tickets, then that's the Throw the Bones. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, and let's try to get this get our subscribers up to 5,000 if you can. So Right now, like I said, with going back to Minnesota, so again, I understand a lot of you might be thinking, well, Nebraska's starting a new system and they got a lot of new players. Well, not really. If you look at the depth chart and you look at the starters, and Matt Rule has said this is going to be a veteran group. He said this is men playing in this first game. This is a man's league. So yeah, you do have some freshmen. And let me get my glasses on. When you get old, you can't see anymore. And if you look, you have on the offensive line, you kind of have a couple that you've seen before. Turner Corcoran is the starting left tackle. You have Piper starting left guard with Ben Scott the center. All of them are juniors. Bryce Benhart is the starting right tackle. He's a junior. And then you got Newelly, who's back now, and he is the starting right guard. He's the only senior on the group. And if you look at the receivers, you got Billy Kemp, we've seen what he's done in the slot, and then you got Alex Bullock, who earned a scholarship as a sophomore and is now starting over Marcus Washington. Marcus Washington's being hurt, and one thing you've seen, and you're going to see this with Matt Rule, he's not going to bring back players early from an injury. So I don't expect Probowski to come back, or Washington or Buford until they're ready to, until they're fully healthy and then some. So I think once he gets the okay from the doctors and saying, hey, they're ready to go, I expect Rule probably to wait another week right after that before he brings them back. That's how I see him doing. That's what I took it when he stated what he stated. So that's the reason why you see Bullock over Washington. I expect when Washington does come back, gets back into the practice, you're going to see probably Washington then. And he's going to get into the mix anyway, playing when that happens. So you also have IGC starting at the other wide receiver. He's a junior. And then, of course, you got Jeff Sims with Purdy and Harburg both being the second depth. They're the or. They have that or by them. And same with Borkercher and Fedoni as the starting tight end. They have that or beside them, so they're basically both the first starting tight ends. And don't look at anything about, well, Borkercher's first. Matt Rule, when he did this depth chart, if they were an or, he went by alphabetical order. So Borkercher being a B is ahead of Fedoni being an F. So that's the reason why you see his name over them. But they're both of them are equal when it comes to the position, and same with Harburg and Purdy. We already talked about the running backs. I like seeing a fullback on the depth chart again. It's been so long to see that, and I think you're going to be surprised what you see in this game. I think you're going to see some old school option. I know, like I said, Matt Rule has been working in this game, and he's got some surprises. So that's another reason why I'm just leaning Nebraska. You got the Minnesota starting a brand new quarterback, starting a new running back, 3 offensive linemen. So they're going to be learning that, where Nebraska's kind of been going to just do some they're going to be that pound it all, get it in system where they're going to basically have this down. And don't get me wrong, you're going to see some growing pains during this. That's why I think the defenses will shine in this game. On the defensive side, again, if you look, we got a lot of veterans as the starters. You got Ty Robinson and Hutmacher as your starting defensive. You got Hutmacher as your spot defensive tackle, and then you got Gunnarsson and Robinson as your starting defensive ends. And then your linebackers, you got Reimer and Heinrich starting there. And in the jack position, you're going to see both MJ Sherman and Chief Borders on that starting position there. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to see them both on the field at the same time in some place too. You got Quentin Newsome as your starting cornerback with Malcolm Hartzog, same two that were there last year starting. And then you have Omar Brown as your safety with Deshaun Singleton as your other safety. So you see there's a lot of veterans there. You have juniors and seniors with some sophomores mixed in. But another thing I liked, which Rule likes doing, and that's what he had to do when he was at Temple and especially at Baylor, where he played a lot of young guys. That's why they lost at the beginning. It was more of a on-the-job training. But if you look at all his second string, They're all underclassmen, and you're going to see a lot of them in the games because they're going to be playing a lot of players, especially on this defense with this 3-3-5. And if you go back, Minnesota they're not going to be used to this 3-5. Not a lot of people saying, well, they played Syracuse in the bowl game. That wasn't Tony White. By then, he already had the Nebraska offer. And so it's not going to be the same. Plus, it's a different team. Tony White and Rhule's going to have a little surprise. And you got to understand, this quarterback hasn't seen it. This running back hasn't seen it. The offensive linemen that are coming in haven't seen it. So they have a young offense that is going to get their first game. A lot that, remember, you make your biggest adjustments and your biggest improvements between game 1 and game 2, and that's in Nebraska too. So that's why I said I think both these defenses are going to shine, and at the end I believe Nebraska edges out Minnesota, and my prediction is 13-10. I expect a few field goals in this game. So my prediction is Nebraska 13, Minnesota 10, and Nebraska going 1-0. And if you watched the Carricker Chronicle, Adam Carricker, who's one of my favorite players, he always was, even when he played, and I've been watching his show for a few years now. Matter of fact, Jacob, his son's on there, who's grown a lot. I remember him as a young boy, coming on there and giving his prediction. So he's been on there. He actually came on, and Adam originally stated in his kind of season prediction and how well the Nebraska would do in the season, predicted Minnesota to beat Nebraska. But then he just, after, I don't know if he watches mine or not, but after I gave my reasoning of why I feel like Nebraska has an edge here, because you got Matt Rhule. They haven't seen Matt Rhule. Nebraska, I guarantee you Matt Rule's been working on this. I got a feeling you're going to be seeing some old style fullback options. You're going to see fullback traps. You're going to see some of the old style options Nebraska used to run. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to be all of that. But I got a feeling you're going to see a mixture of that. Matt Rule's going to have, and Satterfield's going to have, some surprises for PJ and this Minnesota team. And so after Adam went back through and studied the Minnesota and all that, he has now predicted Minnesota and Nebraska. He's predicted Nebraska to beat Minnesota. He gives a prediction of 24-17. And his son Jacob, who's now 6 foot, so you can tell he's taken after his dad when it comes to his height, probably takes after his mom when it comes to his looks. But he's predicted Nebraska to win 21-17. So Adam has now switched, and he said he has the right to switch, which I agree with him, just because 2 or 3 weeks ago you think one team's going to win. By the time, after you look into it, you could easily come back and say it. I still think Nebraska's going to win. So now you have me and Adam thinking Nebraska's going to win, and we're the only ones I see Nebraska going to win. Now, others have said they wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska won, but they've yet to come out with their prediction saying Nebraska's going to win this game. So, again, my prediction is Nebraska 13, Minnesota 10. I think it's more of a defensive battle, probably some mistakes on both sides. And with Nebraska coming out, wouldn't be surprised if it ain't a last-second or last-minute field goal. And if you noticed on the special teams depth chart, you have the freshman, Tristan there, Alavano, that won the position. I know it says or. I guess it is still or, because, again, if you go by alphabetical. But I could see both of them getting an opportunity in this game. It's going to be interesting to see who he goes to if it does come down to the end of the game and they need that kick to win the game. It's going to be interesting who he goes to when it comes to that kick. So let's keep an eye on that. So again, I'll have a post-game reaction to this game afterwards. It probably might be over the weekend. I don't do this full time. This is just something I do on the side. Might be a few years before I could do it full time. So, but again, let's hope me and Adam are right. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Go Big Red.